For this Palestinian family, two upcoming elections are producing two very different reactions. Abla Hamdan, like her husband Jamal, is Palestinian. But unlike him, she's also a citizen of Israel. She can take part in the country's polls on Tuesday. And while she doesn't expect real change, she says voting is a duty.
If I give up this right, then I've given the others the chance to decide on my future. The political decision follows the majority, and if I didn't vote, how can I complain later?
Jamal is allowed to live with his family in Israel, but he's not an Israeli citizen. He can only cast ballots in Palestinian polls in the occupied West Bank and Gaza, and he'll get that chance in May. The long overdue parliamentary elections are the first in 15 years. However, Jamal won't be voting.
My vote doesn't make a difference. The same people will stay in power regardless. The faces of Palestinian officials may change, but their policies are the same. Israel has the upper hand here when it comes to the occupied territory.
According to pollsters, Jamal's opinion is not popular among most Palestinians.
We got the impression by the data that Palestinians are looking positively at the fact that Israel is having election, and that the Palestinian public at large miss election.
When it comes to elections in Israel, Palestinians worry that no matter who wins, the country's leaders will continue to control the lands and lives of Palestinians.
Israeli settlers living in the heart of the West Bank can put up election campaign posters and have a say in their future. But Palestinians living in the same area cannot put up posters like these, and their leaders in the Palestinian Authority can change so little in the reality under occupation.
Back at the Hamdan household, Abla says the determination of Palestinian Israelis to have their say is the only way to make a difference.
As a citizen, I know that Israel is working for its own benefit. It's far-fetched to assume that Israel cares about us as a Palestinian minority, so let's start showing that we are present. Change doesn't happen in a day.
Jamal has never voted in his life, and Abla will cast her fourth ballot in 2 years. They may disagree politically, but both share the hope for a better future for their children. Nida Ibrahim, Al Jazeera, the occupied West Bank.
Okay, I want to focus now on the Israeli election, though, happening on Tuesday, and the main political forces. You've got Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party. It has the largest share of seats in the Israeli parliament, but it faces a greater threat from other right-wingers instead of the usual centre and left. Leading the opposition, you've got the former journalist Yair Lapid and the centrist Yesh Atid party, promising good governance, obviously trying to capitalise on Netanyahu's corruption trials. The right-wing Yamina party, headed by former Education and Defence Minister Naftali Bennett, has criticised the Prime Minister's handling of the pandemic. There's New Hope, made up of former Likud politicians. Making its electoral debut, in fact, the party leader Gilead Saar has positioned himself further to the right of Prime Minister Netanyahu. And then there's Benny Gantz, Netanyahu's main challenger in 3 previous elections, but now facing pretty much political wipeout. Supporters have abandoned his blue and white party since he joined the Netanyahu-led coalition last year. With us from West Jerusalem, Mitchell Barrack, a pollster at Kivon Global Research, also the former spokesperson for the Israeli president, Shimon Peres. Nice to see you, Mitchell. I've lost track of the number of times I've spoken to you in the last 2 years about Israeli elections. They seem to happen so often. As I read through that list of parties there, the first thing that strikes me is that there isn't an opposition. Well, there isn't a strong opposition. There's just lots of little fractured parts of it. And that can't be good for the electoral process, or at least trying to find a majority somewhere.
Well, I think that's going to help Netanyahu. It's interesting because, you know, we're now in our 4th election. Up until now, the first 3 were really, I wouldn't call it an even match, but it was Netanyahu versus Gantz. So there were people that voted Netanyahu, there were people that voted Gantz, and some voted for the smaller parties. Now there isn't one, you know, solid opposition against the prime minister. There's a group of really 3 or 4 parties, or even 5 parties or 6 parties that have committed to being against Netanyahu. And those parties may get together and, you know, form a government that really ends Netanyahu's career. The problem is for the public, they don't see any one person as being the leader of that. So it's going to be hard to really see who's going to step forward, whether it's, you know, the person, as you mentioned, Yair Lapid, who will probably have the most votes after Netanyahu, whether it's Gidon Sa'ar, who comes from the right, from the Likud, or Naftali Bennett, who comes from the right of the Likud. It is still not clear, and I don't think we're going to know.
Okay, and so Prime Minister Netanyahu, the great survivor, a man with all these corruption allegations against him, is actually the strongest player here?
Well, he is and he isn't. I mean, it's basically been for the past, you know, almost 10 years, Netanyahu runs against himself, meaning basically he's running against himself. The thing is like this, there is a lot of fatigue for finishing up with Netanyahu. People are used to the corruption, although some people say, okay, you know, he's under trial. But most people, it's not a burning issue. But people are already, you know, he's been like a total of 14 or 15 years here as prime minister, so people are getting fatigued of that.
Can I interrupt you, Mitchell? Sorry. How is it not a burning issue? How is it not a burning issue that the leader of a country is under the microscope like this? Surely that is something which would make people think again.
We're used to it. We're used to it already. Each election, we got a little bit more desensitized. First, it's the, you know, what's going to happen when the police recommend an indictment? What's going to happen when the attorney general recommends an indictment? What happens when he actually gets indicted? And what happens when he's on trial? So we've passed all that. But here's the thing and why he's not running as he should be. In the time that he formed the last government till now, of which he really broke the deal with Benny Gantz, okay? He's made 2 peace treaties like out of nowhere with Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, you know, warmed relations with Morocco. We have more peace treaties probably coming. And Israel has vaccinated more than half of its population, 5 million people. Even though he mishandled a lot of the closures and the other things, he should really be polling not at 30 seats, but at 42 seats, at 43 seats, meaning these are tremendous achievements. And he's not seeing that. He's not seeing that enthusiasm, that blind support at the polls, because people are tired of going to the polls, and he's wearing thin on some people. But that doesn't mean that he won't have the advantage. And as with most elections, it's all going to boil down to turnout. And the one thing I can predict is that we're probably not going to know the results, not even the night of the election, but not for another week or 2 weeks until President Ruby Rivlin decides who can form the government, and then to have an actual government form. This is going to be a long process, because the other thing to keep in mind is all of these parties have painted themselves in a corner because they've all said who they're not going to sit with. I'm not going to sit with this one. I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to go there. Right. With all of those requirements, it's going to be very, very difficult to form a government for anyone, for any candidate.
Deja vu all over again, isn't it? Mitchell Barrack, great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.